Got it. Just minimizing that. We're ready to go.
And so I turn that volume down too?
Yeah, you can just
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of the
America,
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda. We have several items on here. Approve the following items in the consent agenda: 5A meeting minutes from October 19th meeting, 6A teaching assistant resignation, 6B CSEA resignation, 6C CSEA appointment, 7A donation acceptance, 7B the 21-22 calendar amendment, and 7C special education. We have a motion to accept this consent agenda. Yes.
Yes.
Second, and Colleen. Any discussion? If not, will we be voting here? Probably not. We'll be voting verbally. All in favor? Aye.
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 6. Yes. 0 no, the motion passes. Good of the cause. I don't have anything.
Nothing was shared with me from Karen.
All right, on to reports. Sarah Allen is here tonight to provide her annual report to the board on special education placement rates and programming. Sarah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. And everyone able to see it here or on the screens at home.
Looks good.
Thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you for letting me go through kind of our special ed education overview. We do this annually in the fall, and so I just appreciate you taking the time to take a look at this with me. And if you have any questions along the way, please do that. Okay. So this first slide shows our overall general education students with disabilities and students with 504 plans. So we look at the population and you can see I have a spread of 4 years here. There has been a slight change this year where we were at 17 to 18%. We did in the spring and even last fall, we discussed that we had a particularly large group of preschool students moving into kindergarten. So you can see how that has impacted this chart here and the percentage just in a slight way there. So when we look at K through 12 instructional staff, you will see that there is an increase in the special education teachers, that piece, and the special education teaching assistant piece. We did hire an additional teacher to the fact that we did see students that were coming from preschool and kindergarten with additional needs and that we would need that staff support. So with your support, we were able to hire another special education teacher. And that's why you'll see this slight adjustment in this chart. Same thing with teaching assistants. We did have a slight increase in teaching assistants as well. I can go over, so related service providers is the one bullet that you can't see there. That's this orange piece right here. So when you see that 6%, I know you can't read it because of the Zoom piece there. That's related service providers. So that represents our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, our school counselors, and our speech language pathologists. there in that. So when we look at this, this is that piece of the kindergarten group coming in, and you'll see that middle high school, the percentages stayed the same as far as IEP 504 placement levels by grade levels, but you will see that preschool decreased significantly, but then you'll see the increase in the elementary school percentage there. So that just does a visual representation of those students moving through and just becoming older and joining, going from our preschool services to our school age services.
Or if you have this later, just tell me to stand down, but you have what is the end, the number of you approximate?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have to look at my sheet. You have that actual number? I do. I brought my sheet with me. So when we look at preschool students, we currently have 6 students in our preschool that are receiving services under the CSE. So we have more students than that in UPK. I just want to be clear. These are just students that are being serviced under the CSE. That's 6. We have 42 at the elementary school, and we have 83 at the middle high school. And we have 4 ungraded and ungraded students. Those students that will probably stay with us until they're the age of 21. So this is just the continuum of services slide. This doesn't change from year to year, but it's just a good reminder. I know that you get packets from me that kind of say, we're consultant teacher services or resource room. So this is the services that you see are these services that we look through, and there is a continuum. And so if you go from the top to the bottom, you're really going from the least restrictive to the most restrictive types of settings. So consultant teacher services, that's when a general education teacher and a special education teacher are in the room together, and there's students in there. Special education teacher is working with a particular student, but there are 2 teachers right in the general education setting. The resource room, that can be in the general education, it can be outside of the general education setting. And now you're looking at more specialized services, supplementary instruction, groups that are no larger than 5. And then related services are what we talked about before, the counseling, the speech, the PT, the OT. Sometimes those happen in the general education setting, so right in the classroom, and sometimes those happen outside of the classroom setting. And then integrated co-teaching services, you'll see there's a little star there next to it. That little star is, this is the one service on the continuum that is optional. So all the rest we are supposed to offer to our students, but this one is optional. We do have a very small group of students that receive this, and these are usually students that need more service than a consultant teacher services setting, but they still are in the general education setting. When you think of integrated co-teacher, the teachers are hopefully planning together, prepping together, and then teaching the lessons somewhat together in those services. And then we go to the 15-to-1 special class, or the 12-to-1 special class. These are students that need more specialized instruction, and the ratios are there. So that ratio is that there could be up to 15 students with 1 special education teacher, or up to 12 students with 1 special education teacher. And as we go through the 12-to-1, that's 12 students, 1 special education teacher, plus 1 teaching assistant in that classroom. And those are for students that are starting to have some management needs that might interfere with their instruction. And we have an 8-to-1 piece, same thing, 8 students, 1 special ed teacher, 1 teaching assistant, but more intensive management needs. And the 6-to-1 follows that same pattern, but those are very highly intensive needs at that point. And then we get down to the 12-to-1 to 3-to-1. So they have that nice ratio, and then they change it up on us a little bit. So 12 students, 1 teacher, and then for every 3 students, there has to be 1 additional aide. So when you look at this service, you're looking at students that have a variety of services. Sometimes they need, they have multiple disabilities, and they may have medical needs, and that also involved with their programming. Any questions about continuing? Then I broke down and what our numbers look like within that continuum. One of the things, I do have teacher of the deaf on here, that actually does fall under a resource room service. I just kind of broke it out within this one. So that's not part of the continuum. It fits into the continuum, but you'll see that we are using that service through BOCES. We started that partway through last year and then continuing that this year for some students. Our preschools, you can see last year, if we had the same chart up here, that bar, that purple bar would have been a lot larger, but that has, they have since transitioned to kindergarten. And then consultant teachers is definitely the service that the majority of our students receive. The piece of that is that it can happen right in the general ed setting, and that's where we want the majority of our students to be. We want them learning with their peers, but having support when they're in that setting. Disability classification breakdown. So this does show over the past 4 years, just where there are 13 different categories of disability classifications that you can have in New York State. So I've listed the ones here that we have had or have had in the past. They're not all on here, but if you see, usually learning disabilities are what many of our students, that's the classification they fall under. See, there is a slight increase on the autism spectrum. That classification has increased slightly, but overall, within preschool with a disability, that's what a classification is at the preschool learning services. So you can see that did was higher in 1920, a little lower in 2021, and then significantly lower this year in 2021. We talked about the consultant teacher services, and that leads into the least restrictive environment. So this chart shows the number of students that are in the general education setting 80% or more of their day. You can see 2018, we had 80 students that were in gen ed setting 80% or more. We have a few less, but we also have less that population of students. So as you can see, the majority of our students spend their day in the general education setting with their peers, working on their classwork, socializing, and all the pieces that we want them to do during their school day. And then this green is 40%, 79% of the day. And then there are a few students that do spend less than 40% of their day in the general education setting. Those students usually have some significant needs, and we still, even with that piece, we try to make sure that they're embedded somewhere within their day with those kids. So this chart is taken, it's always a couple of years behind because I use the New York State education report card data. So that's a couple of years behind. So right now we're up to 1920 for least restrictive data. And so that is us compared to some of our neighboring school districts. So Malone is one of them that's right here, and Salmon River, and then you have Saranac Lake and Regis Falls. So you can see that we are one of the most inclusive districts in our area. And I think that's the point we should be proud of, is that we are having students in the classroom and they're being successful in the classroom. And the trends are that everyone is going that the rates of inclusion are going up across the state. So it's good that they're right where we are. Then we look at diploma and credential recipients. When we look at this for last year, we did have a smaller senior class last year as far as students that had IEPs or 504 plans. We just had a smaller senior class. And so you'll see of the students that crossed the stage and that received a diploma or a credential, 82% of them were general education students, 9% of them were students with disabilities, and then 9% were students with 504 plans. Parentally placed in non-public schools. So parents do have the option to place their students in non-public schools. And if that happens and the student does have a need under special education, we develop what's called an IESP, an Individualized Education Service Program. we do still provide services to those students through our district. And so you will see that we did have a slight jump. So we have up to 9 students that are receiving services that are in a Parentally program. And part of this is I talked to each of the individual schools. So I talked with St. Agnes, I talked with Northwood, I talked with North Country Schools, and we make plans of how those students will be serviced, when they will have reevaluations, when they will have meetings. And so that is all part of the process. And each school is a little bit different of what fits their needs for the students that are there. And then we have a few students that are being instructed at home. It's the same piece that they have in IEST. And so we will still meet annually, even if they're instructed at home. We meet annually with those families, we look at the individual plans, and then we talk about what services would be possible. And then when we look at what the board's role in that is, that you have the role of determining what site those services could happen at. So they could be here on site, they could be off site, but that is discussions with our students that are instructed at home. Any questions? Need to look any other slides?
Great information. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate all that you do to help support our district.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. We could make up some questions.
If you think of any afterwards,
Sarah, I actually do have one question. What would you recommend if there is a universal pre-kindergarten student and a parent who has reached out and expressed just some concern about potential services? Should this parent contact you directly?
They can absolutely contact me directly. They have a concern. They can contact me directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then my email or my phone number, and we'll talk. Okay.
Okay, super. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Okay. Buildings and grounds. Yeah. Sure. I'm gonna update you on the happenings of facilities. Last week, well, as you know, we have an ongoing crack issue in the front of the middle high school. So I met with claims auditor last week. We finally went to that process point of formalizing the claim through our insurance. So they were pretty quick about getting here, showing the crack, to evaluate, they'll do up their assessments. I also met with a contractor last week, a contractor that we've used in the past, American Masonry. They're the ones that worked on the top of the middle high 2 years ago, replacing the dimples and all the stonework. They were actually a subcontractor under Mid-States. Then we contracted with them directly at the end of that, finished it all up, because technically speaking, what was contracted with the original with Mid-State was complete. We wanted some additional work. But they are a restoration specialist. So they're not just a masonry outfit. They, what they do, they work on historic buildings. So I had them come in, take a look at it. Seemed like it was, from their perspective, a difficult fix. It was more to be in the way of like time and material. So that really wasn't going to be this huge $200,000 fix. But I guess we've gone down this one before where it was $30,000 fix and $220,000 fix. But they walked me through it in terms of the cracks and how they would do it. They even offered up to do some additional work in the front of the building, things that need to get addressed that didn't get addressed the first time, and caulking some of the columns. If you notice at the base of the fronts where the stonework is, there's some deterioration happening, fixing that as well. They said really that kind of stone really should be waterproof. And every 4 to 5 years it gets reapplied. So talked about doing some of the things that they noticed when they were here that wasn't under the original scope of work, but we'll do it while they're here. Because the fix didn't seem to be, wasn't going to take 3 weeks to do. They thought about it was a 2-person job, about 60 to 80 hours with 2 people doing it, and then we'll get some other things. And they said it was in that $10,000 to $15,000 range, depending on if we wanted to address some of these other things. But they said it would easily come in under the $20,000 threshold. I throw that number out because anything under 20,000, you don't have to send out a formal bid. You can just go with a person that we want. Anything over $20,000, we can do an RFP, or if it's a state approved contract, then we can do that. So they do very great work, and in that regard, they were the first person I reached out to. Obviously, our insurance company could say, "Oh, we have some people in mind as well," but they're going to say the same thing in terms of we're going to need a restoration specialist, and these guys are out of the Albany area, and they do very good work.
This is planned for soon.
Springtime. We're getting into that time of year where any masonry work isn't going to be good because of the cold temperatures. As they said, even when they worked on it, we need consistent 40+ degree weather for work to happen. That way it's curing properly and all that. And that was the same, when they did the work the first time. It's all weather dependent. So as he jokingly said, "Oh, we could come back in June." Once we have consistent 40+.
They see a need to seal it up for the winter.
No, even the structural engineer didn't think there was this huge need as well. And they say, because the size of the cracks aren't huge, they're probably about a 1/4 inch in thickness. So they didn't even see too much of a need just because of where they're located, unless we get this unbelievable sideways rain for a long period of time. But American Masonry, you talked about how they can, if you looked at them, the cracks are kind of at the corner of some blocks, and they can remove the corner of that block to get, that way we can, an engineer can take a look inside, see if there's any structural damage, and be able to replace it. Obviously, matching colors and all that's always going to be the tricky part because of the type of stone and the age of the stone. But we did a nice job of getting it pretty close to the original color the last time it was here. Other things going on, questions on that. So right now it is in the hands of our insurance carrier. They know the scope in terms of what we've seen the damage is resulting from, and just like the other claims, we'll let Utica National handle that portion of it, going after the insurance carrier of the order project. So let them deal with that. That's what their job is.
You're going to be done banging around soon and the oval.
Last word is, they're hoping to have the oval in use by winter break.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you look at it, there's really just one that maybe a half of the straightaway near Main Street is left in terms of pouring. So that, I think their goal is to get everything poured pretty quickly.
So when they come back in June, we won't have to worry about them shaking the building more.
Right. I think most likely what's going to happen to come springtime, it's going to be more of the landscaping portion of it. So I think they're trying to get all the concrete poured before winter really steps in. And today, what they were telling me, I was talking to their their contractor the other morning, and they bring a crew in from Albany when it comes time to pour, of 18 to 20 guys, and they stay while it's pouring, and they're pouring. The concrete is actually, it's a white mix, and then they got to bring it in from Canada. So they had to coordinate all of that to ensure that, the mix is ready, but If they start it, they need to finish it that day. He said that one of the early tours, they were here for 1 a.m. morning. If you lived around here, you probably saw the bright lights while they're doing it. So it does seem like the pouring aspect of it is probably close to finishing, which means we're probably not going to be getting out the big rollers anymore and all that, jackhammering or anything like that. If they find a mistake. Going on, did order a new beacon light for the bottom of the hill. Unlike most things, it's a 4 to 8 week lead time in terms of getting it here. So maybe it will be in December, but we did order a new one. I just thought it was best to, rather than trying to replace parts and pieces, and Joe was, very much appreciative of that, just going with a whole new unit instead of trying to piecemeal it and fix it to keep it up that way. It was time. It was time to go with a new machine that will hopefully work for years and not have a lot of issues that we've seen over the last few years. So that's on order. I've asked each of the buildings as well as transportation to kind of do an informal building condition survey and look around, look at the things that could need replacing near future, in a couple of years, start to put together that list, in the hopes of trying to tackle these things as they come up and be a little more proactive. And I talked about this, I think, in the last board meeting when we were looking at what to do with some of our excess funds. But have that list ready so that if you guys decide that we want to put up the repair reserve proposition in the main votes and get passed, that we have some things that we can at least plan for over the next 3 to 5 years, and try to avoid the next capital project of it being just infrastructure stuff, because we weren't able to tackle the repairs as they come up. Well, the building and grounds, I mean, they're just, trying to prepare for winter, and all that. They're prepping the fields, the soccer fields, no wait until boys are done, and hopefully that's not for a while. So they can continue. That's a good thing when you can't get to the field. That means our sports teams are performing well. So they're ready to do that once that happens to get those finished up. But they're getting ready for winter. We're also having them continually looking at the things that we can clean up. I don't know if you noticed. I think we talked about it. This little walkway here underneath the music wing, all cleaned up. But then back here in the summertime, the building and grounds people clean things up. So one of the things that we're trying to get the head custodians to do is look around and let's start getting rid of the things that have been sitting around for years and dispose of them properly. The IT department, they're working on the computer side of it, looking on all of the excess items and starting to inventory them so that we can dispose of them as well. You'll probably, we'll have a spreadsheet come to the board in the future about having you guys approve them as surplus so that we can properly dispose of them. And we do that through both these, with all of our computers through both projects. Track had some warranty work needed, and they did that a couple of weeks ago. They had some cracks there, so that was all under the warranty from the construction project. Lastly, administratively, operational and speaking, we've rolled out a new human resource payroll software so that all staff can access their information via this it's called Optigates. One of the nice things is it's going to eliminate the need for us every 2 weeks to print off the direct deposit pay stubs. And then in envelopes and get them all out, so staff will have access to their payroll information online in real time. So we rolled that out as well, moving in that direction to be a little more efficient. Okay, that's where we are. Questions? Thank you.
Yeah.
Superintendent's report.
Okay, I've been masking my enthusiasm for the statement I'm about to make at the start of this. As of today, we have in both of our instructional facilities the ability to test symptomatic students or staff and have results in 13 minutes. So it's taken over 2 years to get to that point, but hallelujah. So we are extremely excited. I will be starting a letter campaign to families to inform them that we are the fastest resource for their students henceforth in securing symptomatic testing for our students. So many thanks to Essex County Department of Health for their leadership in coordinating that effort. But this is really a new dawn for us as an institution. So I waited a long time to say that. Very, very encouraging. Unfortunately, the COVID scourge is not done rearing its head. We regrettably had the most tragic number of days in the county since the start of the pandemic over the weekend, reporting 83 cases, and there's a bevy more to report. So that is discouraging. From the school's perspective, we regrettably have had a number of cases that we've reported to the community. All of those cases originated outside of our facilities to date. And we've done the contact tracing of close contacts of those cases of anyone who was in the facility. And we've cross-checked after people have been released from quarantine who are deemed close contacts. And we have yet to have a single case of transmission in any of our facilities. So this tells me that school remains the safest place for students and staff, that our staff are doing an outstanding job of adhering to the layered approach to prevent transmission, and that our students are doing an outstanding job as well. The Department of Health is currently planning a layout approach of vaccine clinics for students aged 5 to 11 years old, with the hope of rolling something out as early as mid-November. So very encouraging. That would be a 2-dose delivery, similar to the other Pfizer delivery mechanisms, and looking to plan with the regional schools to have what could potentially be a drive-through system, an on-site system where a pediatrician would be present. But once again, discouraging news on the COVID front, but these incremental steps to hopefully turn the tide. On October 22nd, we had a staff development day, professional development. I had an opportunity to sit with staff in 4 different roundtable sessions. There was no agenda at these sessions. It was just an opportunity for people to share how their year is going and for me to better understand how we can support them as a district. Lots of great things came from those discussions. One I want to highlight directly is there's a sense among many of our instructional staff, but staff generally, that the collective strain of the pandemic has initiated a level of fatigue in people and in students and teachers in particular that is worrisome. And there's also a sense, a desire to better understand how to address the trauma that students are experiencing with the collective impacts of the pandemic. So in a traditional world where subs were available and our operations weren't so impacted by absence, I would already be planning professional development and having people in and sending people out and trying to work on these strategies. But fortunately, that's a symptom of the problem. So what we're looking at doing is doing 2 different book studies with the staff. One is based around the book Teacher Burnout Turnaround, the other based around the book Trauma Informed Classroom. And they're just 2 different ways. One designed to account for the strain that's happening in the teaching profession to the instructors themselves, and one based on the needs of the students. So we're going to be rolling that out with the staff, and that's, I think, going to be well received and a way for us to try and address the needs of students. At the middle high school level, we're gearing up for what's called a multi-tier system of support model. So the traditional counseling model addresses the needs of students with their career planning, with their education, and basically anytime something comes up where they need some one-on-one time with an instructor. The multi-tier system of support model is almost like the emotional equivalent of the instructional AIS model. So the instructional AIS model basically has 3 tiers. Tier 1 is where you have students receiving instruction from the classroom teacher, generally to all the students. Tier 2, you have more targeted support, often with the help of a teacher assistant, usually in the general education classroom as well, in collaboration with the teacher. Tier 3 is where you would actually pull out the students who are most on the bubble, so to speak, who need the greatest level of supports for one-to-one intervention intensive supports. So that's an instructional model. MTSS, or multi-tier supports, is based in the same philosophy, but with the social emotional wellness of students. So the first tier of MTSS deals with proactive approach to address social and emotional wellness in the classroom from the teacher, embedding things like the Positivity Project into lessons, bringing in speakers to talk about emotional wellness and health, healthy choices, things like that. Most of this done primarily by the classroom teacher. The next tier is intervention. And this is the area that we're really working on as a counseling team presently at the middle high level, is the collective buildup of stress and trauma in some of our students at that level is just resulting in unpredictable behavior that sometimes leads to discipline. And what we don't want to happen is there to be a lack of response from the social emotional side when a student has a discipline incident, so that our only response is disciplinary. We want to provide the restorative practices that are reflective of our policies and our philosophy as a district. So what that really means is that we've done a couple of different things. The first is, if a student has an incident where they're not being successful in the classroom, we're creating an on-call schedule of our counseling team. And so we're breaking it up hour by hour. And unless there is a clear disciplinary issue that needs to be addressed by the administrator in that moment, the first step is to contact the on-call member of the counseling team to de-escalate the student. We know when students have that amygdala hijack going on, they're just not able to represent themselves and their views in an effective way. So really kind of pushing towards that tier 2 approach. Once the student is de-escalated, then it becomes that conversation with the administrator about reflecting what happened, what could have gone better, but not from a survival standpoint, but from a reflective standpoint at that point. And then the final stage is, if we're seeing recurrent behaviors where students are particularly in trauma, their behaviors are exacerbating, then we work with our partners at Essex County Health to provide outside supports for students. So it's a pretty inclusive model, and I think the team is excited to start the work and just to feel like we're able to create a proactive plan for reactive episodes that occur in the facility. And they seem to be happening more just because of the collective buildup of the stress of the pandemic. So that's an exciting thing that's going on. We also are looking at applying for a grant through Essex County for a program that's called SHAPE, which is the School Health Assessment and Performance Evaluation. And basically, it's a survey system where different entities in the school would answer questions, and it would give us a sense of the level of social emotional wellness that's within our school. And if we are able to receive the grant, not only would they provide the survey and all of that process, but they would also make recommendations to us as a district about how to intervene appropriately to support the students. So hopefully that will be something that comes to fruition for us. We had the first meeting of the dress code committee this evening. We had 15 members present. Any concerns about students not participating need not be present at this time. They had cogent points and engaged in thoughtful discussion throughout. So our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, and the next meeting after that will be 2 weeks thereafter. And tentatively, I'm hoping to present a report to the board with recommendations from the committee at our December 7th meeting. but wonderful discussion and great community and student involvement during that. So we're excited. Speaking of great community involvement, Holy Halloween Parade, Batman. Anyone who was at the horse show grounds, wow, we had easily over 500 people in attendance. It was a Bluebird Day that you don't typically get on October 29th. We were truly blessed. It was a nice experience considering that we couldn't be at Main Street, and it was very enjoyable. On the teaching side of the house, I've had more of an opportunity to get in and really just witness some quality instruction from our staff in both buildings, which is the part of the job that I most look forward to. So, each meeting I try and provide some anecdotes about just some good work that's happening in classrooms, and today is no different. The elementary on Monday had representatives from the Blue Mountain Lake Museum on hand. They conducted a fur trapping unit on New York State history. They had pelts from bobcats to weasels to you name it all on the tables. And the students got tactile learning. They got to play a game where they have to act as traders, the French traders, the coureur de bois, and all of that stuff with the native populations in pre-colonial America. And as a former history teacher, I was nerding out. It was fantastic. So kudos to the elementary school for that excellent effort. Tomorrow, the 5th.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, please do.
We have Blue Mountain Lake Museum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The 5th grade leaves tomorrow for a trip to Albany. They'll be going to the New York State Museum, to Grant's Cottage. I'm just outside of Saratoga, where former President Ulysses S. Grant wrote his memoirs and bid us all farewell. And a lunch out. And if you ask the 5th graders what they're doing, then they will tell you those things in the exact opposite order. We're going to a lunch out, then Grant's Cottage, and then to a museum. On the middle high side, I had an opportunity to spend some time in our science wing, and was just frankly blown away at the quality of instruction and the engagement by our teachers. I rushed back to my office after being in 4 other classrooms and wrote them all an email and just said, like, wow, I would love to be in one of your classes. Here's an anecdote. I walked into Mr. Baker's room. There was music playing in the background. As the students entered in, he greeted them all. He welcomed me into the classroom. Everything was fluid. The kids were having fun. I look and there's a box with rocks and labels on them. And it made me think about that unit when I was in science class. You had to do the scratch test and the bubble. Do you remember this? I don't know if you guys remember this. Like, does it bubble? Is it an acidic type rock? And I was a social studies guy. But anyways, I asked Mr. Baker what this was. And he said, oh, class. These are high school students, mind you. Mr. Seymour wants to know what this is. He goes, this is our rock daycare. And when the students start the minerals unit, everyone adopts a rock. We all learn about the rock, and at the end, we get to identify what it is. So then they started doing all these tests, and the next day, Mr. Baker did a mystery unit where it was he used a murder mystery kit to put clues throughout town so that students could help identify minerals. Kids are just engaged, excited. I would want to be in that class. I walked down the hall to Ms. Morgan's room and learned about our sewage treatment plant here. And the students were wowed and impressed to learn that various bodies of water that are somewhat familiar to them in proximity to the school are involved in different ways. And they were just ecstatic and grossed out all at the same time. It was fantastic. On the athletic front, Bombers are killing it. Just fantastic season for so many of our teams. The varsity girls cross country team placed first at the CBAC championship. They move on to the Section 7 sectionals in Elizabethtown on Friday. The winners of that match will go to state competition in Shenango Valley on the 13th. Our girls team is currently ranked #1 in the state. Fantastic. Our varsity boys soccer team, Section 7 champs, and they take on Madrid Waddington, the Section 10 champ representatives at Potsdam High School tomorrow. So good luck to the boys. And we are looking to have a spectator bus so that students who wish to go to Potsdam can do so. if they are unable to have transportation. The varsity volleyball team has section finals against Northern Adirondack Central on Saturday, the 6th at Saranac Central at 5 p.m. So all in all, Bombers are just having a fantastic season. Couldn't be more proud. That's my report.
Very much. Any questions?
Thanks, Tim.
Information for the board, you have two items in there, both related to the audit. And as is in the narrative, Mr. Telling will be meeting with the audit committee on November 16th and then presenting to the full board after that meeting. So, Dana, do you have anything else?
No, the new piece there is that second document, a single audit. We haven't had one up until this year. That's all about how much federal money we received, and in previous years we've stayed under the threshold of having to do this audit of $750,000, and we exceeded that last year, and we will be continuing to do this for a few more years. This year, that federal funds that F1 is called now is currently budgeted at about $1.8 million. And that's all related to the various COVID relief monies that have focused the schools, as well as our cafeteria, and that is federal reimbursements, being able to reimburse everything last year as well. So all has to be accounted for, therefore we have to do the audit once we see that threshold.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on the audit? Meeting will get more information. Linking goals to the agenda items.
We got a few. Most of them first and foremost, the presentation by Superintendent Seymour on the trauma-informed classroom, providing essential support to students, teachers, staff as it emerged from the pandemic. What was also did I see in there? Sarah Allen's for the median special education needs, students' needs, support systems through continued allocation of resources through a presentation, which work she's done. I think was it from the Blue Mountain Lake Museum? That's to be in touch with student population by receiving 5 or more. Never mind. That's the presentations. Probably a few more, but those are some that stuck out.
I think that I'm not sure what category this would fall under, but when Tim mentioned the testing that we finally now have after 2 years, I don't know what category that would fall in. Students first and foremost, I don't know, but I think that is something that we've worked for and finally, we're able to receive.
A few more, but I'll just give them to Dan so you can. You don't have to. Any others? If not, discussion phase, community schools. This is in follow-up to the presentation we received last meeting with Diane and Erica from the Saranac Lake School District. Tim, you want to lead this one?
Thank you much. Yes, so I was impressed by the presentation, and they put forth a model that really has just made me think about if we could do more for our students. And some of the data in that presentation that I found particularly compelling was the data speaking to the erosion of a subset of jobs, the middle class jobs, over the past 6 years, and how that's correlated to a population drop in our community, going from roughly 3,200 residents within Lake Placid to now I see roughly 2,300. That's quite a drop in a number of years. The other piece that I was really thinking about was the comment made by Diane about just about geography and about how for Saranac Lake being a part of Franklin County, if they want services primarily, it's a trip to Malone. And for us here, if the head of services is out of Elizabethtown. And so we're talking about oftentimes people who are transportation lacking, who are income constrained, and we could be in a place to be a network and a hub for our families. So I really wanted to gauge the level of enthusiasm that the board has for this prospect after that, and to see if it's worthy of some action to create a plan.
Tim, in reading just your overview, I think it's actually really clever to try to designate maybe a member of the current teaching staff without adding an additional one. Like yourself and many others, I was very impressed by the presentation that was given. And I was also amazed at the accomplishments that they have completed in the Saranac Lake District. And I was familiar with many things that Erica Bazzaio has been a part of, but then to hear the extensions that her coworkers have completed, it really has set the bar pretty high. But I definitely am interested in supporting whatever direction you'd like to take in this, but I think it would be wonderful for our district, especially if it may not cost the district anything additional.
Well, and I have Dana to thank for that suggestion on the model. That the cleverness definitely falls over there on this one. It seems like a nice clean path, and if we're able to go in this direction and we look at a member of the LPEA, there's just so many benefits to that, both in terms of internal knowledge of our school and the community, but also, it could be an individual that really has outstanding writing skills. So this could be, much like Saranac Lake suggested, something that isn't just self-sustaining, but can really bring quite a bit of funds in to make the lives of our students substantially better. So that's why I'm most intrigued with that model. So I appreciate that.
I know, sure. And I also know that Erica is very interested in providing support and networking with whomever we might eventually have in this position. She's more than willing. She's told me that when she was starting in this position that she traveled to Malone and Potsdam and other districts to get information, and she now has that, so we don't have to really create the stone, so to say, and she's willing to help. So I just think it could be really an exciting endeavor for our families and our students.
I'd second that.
Very much so. I think the only concerns I have is going too broad. It's just, the opportunities out there are unlimited. I think it's a great opportunity, and I was very excited after that.
Return on investment, how many dollars that she's brought back to the schools. We're leaving money on the table, huh? Doing this to some degree.
Anecdotally, we had just an individual from the community representing a kind-hearted other individual in the community today, saying, one, we'd like to donate to your backpack program, and we have funds set aside. How can we support your students? And I was able to say, please have a seat and let me bore you for the next 10 minutes, because and I talked about the possibility of this community schools model, and they were very enthusiastic in supporting it. And I just think we are leaving money on the table, and we could be doing so much. I'm glad to hear so far that you guys are excited about this.
Very much so. And I think too, when you look at programs like this, the return on investment isn't just in the grant money that you get to bring in the district, but in improving the social and educational situations for our students, eases the burden in general ed as well. And so I think that would, whatever we can do to improve the lives of our students will pay off, not just in funds coming in directly, but in, when you have, students that aren't worrying about food security, you have a better classroom, and education improves for all the students involved. So I think that this is a great opportunity. I think that our community is definitely at a tipping point. And so whatever we can do to adjust back onto the cliff would be better.
We have a unique possibility because we're Lake Placid as well. And if we can derive supports that meet the basic needs of families, that's going to be so beneficial. But what if we can get to a place where we can leverage our partnerships with ORDA and provide the enrichment experiences for our students? I mean, you know, we're having discussions about how we can be good partners about access to facilities for the games, and looking at our school calendar, and you know, allowing construction to take place. And there's so many instances in which our partnership has really been laid bare, and there are facilities and opportunities for our kids that I think we could lean into in a way that hasn't been done formally, that just be outstanding. So I think sky's the limit. We have so many gifts dots that we could connect together with this. So
Yes,
exciting.
the other opportunity has already been tapped into from a backdoor perspective, but currently at the fitness center, we see 2 autistic children that are a member of this district, and the program that they're put through, their parents are saying, you know, for the next 3 or 4 hours after their exercise session, they're just different kids. And those are for the children that can afford it, or the families. And I'm sure there's other diagnoses and other autistic children who can't afford it. So, you know, partnering with Adirondack Health and maybe either bringing the kids to the fitness center or bringing the instructor to the school, which probably wouldn't be as effective, but that the instructors have a blast too with these kids. It's just fun to watch. It really is. So that's just another avenue.
So
It just seems like about setting boundaries. I'm not boundaries, but guidance on it, right? Because you said sky's the limit.
Spider fast.
Yeah.
well, I like the idea of the July start. So we lay out a very thorough plan so we don't fall into the trap of trying to do too much, and in doing so, doing those things poorly. We really are particular with how we approach.
Do we have anybody that you're aware of in the staff? I need to mention names, but that has any grant writing?
We have some outstanding writers and some with grant writing history already on the staff.
Okay.
And
I do feel like that would be core.
it really is,
Yeah.
because it feeds so much, you know.
Yeah.
So. We have a talented group. I think it would not be hard to find the right candidate who's interested in doing this work. So.
Excellent.
Absolutely, this is exciting.
Any other comments? Have everything you need?
More than enough.
Good.
Yep.
Next item up is the board self-evaluation. I felt like we were somewhat efficient in completing this last time, because the objective or the goal actually is to set a plan of action to those items which fell short of the 50% goal, and we did have 3 of them. I just would like to pass them by you and see if they aren't self-rectifiable, if that's in other words. So the first one is the board is actively involved in both local and state levels of advocating for education legislation, and Colleen addressed that last meeting. And just COVID's just been, you know, COVID in the supply chain right now get all the blame. So we'll stick with that. But really, that's been the deficit, I believe, unless somebody else has any other points of view on that.
It's been difficult because twice I've been bumped out of being included in the group, and as I said before, it's almost like back in the day when you were a teenager trying to get concert tickets and dialing the phone 45 times. And it's a little frustrating. So I do hope that that changes in the future. But, so I don't know, because when I do get to, participate, it really is beneficial. And you do get to have your voice heard of issues that, focus on your particular district. So I'm hoping when the next round comes up that I'm a little bit quicker on the speed dial.
You're aging yourself, Colleen.
I know. It's there. It's there.
Party line.
I have my phone 24/7 with me, but I'm telling you, somebody else is faster than I am on responding via email. So
I believe it was the dial part that got me.
I know.
We'll let you keep your job this time.
Yeah, exactly.
The second one's at least every 2 years, the board has a retreat. And I believe that's in the planning phases, correct? Colleen, that's you again?
Yeah, Martha and I are working on that together. And I think we decided to table it into the springtime, and hopefully maybe COVID is a thing of the past where we can actually gather as a group. And we're not really sure the direction of it, whether it's going to be a traditional in the boardroom type of a retreat, or if we try to do something maybe a little bit more outside of the box. I just don't know, but it is in the thought process.
Great, thank you. And the last one is just board members increase leadership skills by participating in development activities within and outside the school districts. I believe, again, a victim of COVID.
Yeah, exactly. New York City was great. We went, that was a lot of fun and learned a lot. It was great to network, but yeah. Oh, very fun. That's a word.
Hype it in there somewhere. I went to school here, so all right, anything else on the board self-evaluation? That was the 3 items that we covered.
I just had one question. Who is the 2 extra? I mean, we only have 7 board members,
We
but
included Dana and Tim.
I must have been Karen. I didn't fill out.
Karen might have been being,
Karen.
well, yeah.
I
She
thought,
interviewed you and you didn't know it.
oh, that makes sense. Okay. I thought 10 weeks was just a little too soon for me to evaluate
Okay,
the board from my perspective.
because the top of that, it does these 4 categories. She said, should we expand it? I said, sure, why not?
Also, the survey says, are you a board member or the superintendent? So if there's any piece of anonymity there, I'm putting board member just so you know. It is.
Okay, strategic plan. And there's a lot of narrative content here.
Yeah, I just wanted everyone to kind of reflect. Maybe I'll just contextualize this from an outsider becoming an insider. So during my period of getting to know the district, I was pleased to have the strategic plan that's still in place to really understand the values of the district. And I think it's great to continue to lean into those values and to assess if it needs to be modernized. And I mean, I can't recall when the strategic plan was done last, but I do know there's been a global pandemic since that time, and there's been a number of different factors that have taken place. So certainly seems ripe for an opportunity. And I'm happy to solicit quotes and to find prospective individuals to do this work for us. I was hoping that I could get a sense of the scope of the work that the board would like to see happen. And essentially the big thing I'm thinking of is the facilitators of these strategic plans. I've been through 2 of them myself, and they will go similar to our community schools discussion, as broad as you want or as narrow as you want. And they often start with things like mission and vision. And that often takes a better portion of the strategic planning process. So my feeling thus far is that the mission of the district is well known and has aged extraordinarily well. I don't want to speak on behalf of all parties, but I guess just it'd be helpful for me to understand the work we're looking for so that I can provide the best options for the board to select from.
My perspective is it's, as you said, the mission and vision. Yes, they should be looked at, but I think they're pretty solid. So just looking at the specific content within the strategic plan, is there updating? And with pandemic, on the flip side of that, is this the time? Will that skew our strategic goals in a different direction that hopefully we'll be out of this mess soon? And, will we need to do another strategic plan then? I'm not sure. So I think have you spoken with Martha at all?
Just briefly, not in detail.
She's sort of taken on the liaison between representing the board in the strategic planning process for getting everything put together.
Okay, great.
So I know she had some ideas, and I know last time it worked rather well, and I'm not sure, Dana, you were involved, correct? I believe most of the work was done on the front end without meeting. Then we got together on a Saturday and about 5-6 hours. Sarah, were you here? No?
Yeah, the facilitator kind of met with
We were in different
groups,
groups,
and kind of had dialogue and then brought it all together. And then I think it then came to you guys, the board,
Right.
and then fleshed it all out. But the facilitator really did, I'll call a lot of the legwork itself,
Right.
met with the stakeholders, gathered the data, put that data together in very broad. Here's what I'm getting from the various groups, and then kind of funneled it into a working plan.
If I recall, we only had one meeting. With all the stakeholders. That was nice.
Rick, your question of is this the time is really making me think. And I'll just, I mentioned in the content, but two of my colleagues are undergoing this process now. I spoke to both of them, and I said, to what extent is COVID creating sort of malaise over everything, because you have to do that data first to assess where the needs are. And COVID, they said it's putting a veil on everything. But so they're moving forward, but saying, we're in the back of our heads, we're always saving that a lot of this may be exacerbated by COVID, but it's highlighting things that are still of value to look at. But they said, that your question of is this the time is one that probably the most important one.
Any other comments, questions? If you could just touch base with Martha.
I will. Yep, that sounds great.
Next section is minutes. Consent personnel, most of these are consent. All three are. Was just a question, which if anybody takes offense, please let me know. Food service director, is that expected?
David, do you want to speak to that?
It was expected after I got the letter.
Okay.
So the answer
It was
is
not.
no, it was not expected.
Okay.
It was a good Monday morning.
That's a new hire. Fairly new.
Yes.
You can't keep that position filled.
Famous at the bar. So,
Let's see, additional action items. We have donation acceptance, which is under the consent. And then the calendar, which is consent and special education. Any questions on special education packet for this evening or the one that was given for the 16th? If not, fewer trees are being used these days. I've noticed. It's the time of the year, right? till May, and then it all breaks loose again. For the good of the cause, well, as my telephone rings or anybody else's, we'll go through that. We'll enter the adjournment phase. Our next meeting is November 16th. And the first one in December is December 7th, which takes us to the 21st for the second one, which is generally, we do not. Anybody would like to come participate on the 21st of December, you're welcome. Old agenda topic items, anything? New agenda topics, Martha wanted me to include a few. Number one, she'd like to discuss the veterans tax exemption. How long ago was that we discussed that? 4 or 5?
Yeah, it was before I came into this position, so it's probably about 5 years ago. Probably when it first, I want to say first came out, but first was brought to.
Right.
Yeah, brought up about 5 years.
I know we had a meeting in Wilmington, which we had 2 or 3 people show up, veterans, and then no one was here. But I did go over the historical perspective of that with Martha, and from my recollection, which probably is 50% accurate these days, but anyhow, so I guess she had a question from constituents, so she would like to discuss that. And also she'd like to discuss leadership development. She can elaborate more on that. It's a setting meeting. Anything else anybody has? Adjournment of the meeting, recommended action is motion to adjourn the meeting. Sorry, Colleen, and who else is in there? Joe. Jeez. Sorry, Joe. I didn't hear from either of them, so I sort of got lost there. You guys awake?
Oh, yeah, well.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.